Welcome to the Martial Arts Classroom. I'm your teacher, Juliana Holmes. Okay, so today I'm going to take you through what I have dubbed the 5-minute history of the world. I don't know if it's going to be exactly 5 minutes or not, that's just what I call it when I'm teaching my students. But how the karate family of arts came to be, how they're kind of all connected. We think of these arts, taekwondo, kung fu, karate, we think of these as all being separate and distinct forms from different places, and they are, but they're all connected. And so we're going to find out how. I'm going to resist the temptation to go into too much depth and detail. I think this stuff is really cool. I like learning about the history and culture. I think it's important. I think it's interesting. When we're talking about the karate family of arts, what we're really talking about are the big three: China, Korea, Japan. Okay? Obviously, there are dozens and dozens of other Asian nations, many of which I didn't label here, and they all have their own systems of martial arts. Okay? Martial arts have been around ever since people have been around, because people want to fight. When we're talking about martial arts, we have to start with China. So, here in the West, most of us know the martial arts from China as Kung Fu. Thank you, Bruce Lee. Thank you, Kung Fu Panda. We all know the word Kung Fu. Now, if you want to be technical, the real word is Wushu, which means martial arts. And whichever way you call it, Wushu or Kung Fu, you're talking about hundreds of different systems of fighting, okay? But Kung Fu actually means hard work to achieve greatness, but that's another story. Kung Fu actually, it did originate in China, but with some help from outside. So if you go far enough back in history, you actually have history meets legend at a certain point. So if we go back about 1,500 years or so, we're going to find that the Shaolin Temple in China, and you had this guy from the West. They said that this visitor from the West came, and by most accounts, he's from India. And his name is Bodhidharma. Let's see if I can spell. Oh boy. Let me check it. Okay. Bodhidharma came from the West. He came from India, and he was a very important person. Many say he was a prince, and he was a Buddhist teacher. And so he came to the Shaolin Temple, and he taught them Chan Buddhism, Buddhism through meditation. And but he noticed that they were always falling asleep and everything like that, and they were out of shape, so they'd be meditating and they'd be passing out. And so he decided to teach them exercises and postures that would help make them healthier and stronger, and they could meditate better. And so these postures and exercises that he introduced became the basis for what is now called Shaolin Kung Fu. All right? And over the next 1,500 years, Shaolin Kung Fu developed and spread all throughout China, and now you have hundreds and hundreds of systems of Kung Fu all throughout China. Okay? So the next big player that I want to talk about is actually this little guy right here. Okay? This tiny little island we call Okinawa. Now, Okinawa is actually now a part of Japan. In modern times, it is considered a part of the Japanese islands, but back in the day, it was its own kingdom. Okay. So you have the 3 villages in Okinawa, the 3 provinces, I should say. You have Shuri, Tamari, and Naha. Okay, and they all each developed sort of their own systems, and they collectively called it Te. All right, Te is the Okinawan word for hand. All right, that just means fighting with your hands. Round about in the 1700s-ish, you had a lot of trade and travel between Okinawa and China, particularly southern China, okay? And you actually had a lot of Chinese settlers who moved to Okinawa as, part of a cultural exchange. And what ended up happening is you had some practitioners of Te who actually began learning Kung Fu from the Chinese. And we think of this as like a new concept, like, oh yeah, well, you know what? I'm gonna learn Muay Thai from this guy over here, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from this guy over here, and boxing from over here, and wrestling from over here, and I'm gonna combine it all and have a mixed martial art. Well, the truth of the matter is that's always been going on. People have always been learning from each other, trading ideas, bouncing ideas off one another. So it's really been the norm throughout history. So you had the Okinawans who were practicing Te, and then they started practicing with the Chinese and learning Chinese Kung Fu. And so they added what they learned from the Chinese, and they called it Tode. Okay? Now, Tode is Okinawan. It actually means Chinese hand. Okay, so they started calling their practice Chinese hand, and of course every village and every practitioner kind of called it something different, but they started referring to it as Chinese hand, Tode. Well, fast forward to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and now you have Japan who's saying, hey Okinawa, you're part of us now. You're part of the Japanese islands. Don't you see how close you are to us? You should be part of Japan. Didn't really happen exactly like that, but so what ended up happening is the Okinawans started adopting more, Japanese culture, language, styles of dress, things like that. And the Japanese were trying to integrate Okinawa into the Japanese culture. And so you had this man, very important name, Gichin Funakoshi. Let me write that down. Gichin Funakoshi, known as the father of modern karate, okay? And what happened was he was an Okinawan karate practitioner who learned from some of the greatest masters on the island, all right? And at a certain point, he got a job teaching in the schools in Okinawa, okay? And he had done a demonstration for some very important bigwigs from Japan, some people who represent the royal family. And so they thought, hey, this karate stuff is so cool. Why don't you come to Japan and teach it in schools there? And so Master Funakoshi, he traveled to mainland Japan where he began teaching karate to the masses. Now, the problem with this is the Japanese were at war with China. They didn't really like the Chinese. In fact, that's going to be a theme here. There's a lot of people warring, and Japan always seems to be in the middle of it. And so the Japanese were at war with China. They didn't really like the Chinese. And what was Funakoshi's art called? Chinese hand. All right? And so he had to kind of think on his feet and come up with a better name that would sound more Japanese and would appeal to the Japanese idea, the Japanese philosophy, okay? And so what he said was, I'm going to start teaching karate. Karate. And he added the word do, just like judo, aikido, kendo, all these Japanese martial arts, right? Let's break this down. Kara means empty in Japanese. Karate, hand, hand, all right? So, do means the way. The way. So that actually refers to like the idea of Taoism. It's like not only a path, but it's also like a way of life. Okay. So karate do, which means the way of the empty hand. All right. So Gichin Funakoshi started teaching along with some other Okinawan masters. He wasn't the only one, but he was credited as being the father of modern karate. He started teaching in mainland Japan. So Japan sort of adopted karate as a native Japanese martial art. So from Japan, it spread throughout the world. Now let's talk about Korea. Pre-World War II, Japan decided, hey, guess what, Korea, you're ours now. And so for the longest time, pre-World War II and up through World War II, Korea was occupied by Japan. The Japanese forced Koreans into the Japanese military, into the Japanese school system. They had to learn, the expectation was that Korea was now a part of Japan, right? The Japanese said, what are you guys doing over there? You're doing your native Korean martial arts? Oh, that's cute, okay? No. You're going to do Japanese martial arts. Japanese is better. Do it our way. And so you had all of these native Korean martial artists who were practicing things like Taekyon, which was an ancient Korean martial art, and we're going to get more into that in a moment. Okay, so it's called Taekyon. Spelling? Taekyon is a native Korean martial art that is sort of a sporting game of kicking. It was sort of kick the top knot was originally the game. They had the top knot on their head and they would try to kick it. And there was also takedowns and kicks to the body and things like that. So the Japanese banned all native Korean martial arts, but they said you can practice Japanese martial arts through the school system and through the military. So you had all these Korean martial artists who began practicing Japanese karate. Many Koreans actually went to mainland Japan and started learning. And then by the end of World War II, Korea was liberated from Japan. And when that happened, the Koreans were so happy and so excited because obviously the occupying force had been pushed out of their nation and there was a lot of national pride. The Koreans are a very proud people. And so they were, yes, Japan, get out of here, we don't like you. And you had all these Korean martial artists who were now first, second, even sometimes third, fourth degree black belts in karate at this point, going, can we still practice our martial arts? Is that okay? There was sort of this battle of ideas going on because you had some people who were calling their martial art the Korean pronunciations for these things, so Kong Sudo, which sounded very Japanese to a Korean ear, because this means empty hand way. Empty hand, okay? Then you had other members calling it Tong Sudo. You might have heard this before. It's still in use today. Tong Sudo. Whoops. Okay. What does this mean? China, Tang Dynasty. So Tong Su Do, the way of the Chinese hand. Tode was Chinese hand, remember? And so you had all these practitioners practicing karate, and they wanted to continue to practice and teach, but they couldn't really sell it to a Korean mindset because Japan was very unfashionable now. Around about 1955, you had this meeting of all the Korean masters, and they had started the original 5 kwans, okay? Kwans meaning schools. And they were like, okay, man, we can't call it Kong Sudo, we can't call it Tang Sudo, what are we gonna call our art? And this guy by the name of Che Hang Hai, what do I write it? General Che Hang Hai from the South Korean military. He was the founder of Odo Kwan, which was one of the 5 original styles. And he said, I've got it. A lot of us have practiced Taekyon in our youth, right? We like kicking, but we like karate too. So what are we gonna do? I've got it. Let's call our new martial art Taekwondo. Okay? Sounds very Korean. It sounds like this ancient Korean martial art, Taekyon, which means the way of the foot and fist, or the way of kicking and punching. Okay? So they settled on this as the blanket name for all South Korean martial arts, South Korean karate. And because of the national pride of Korea, they emphasized the Taekyon, they emphasized a lot of the kicking techniques. They added in a lot of their own, spinning heel kicks and crescent kicks and jumping flying kicks, because that was that felt very Korean. The Koreans are very fond of kicking. And so they created this new style, this new system, based on the karate that they had learned from Japan, and then adding in their own Korean flavor. And they spread it far and wide throughout Korea and ultimately throughout the world. Now, the Koreans being such a nationalistic people, they sort of downplayed the emphasis of how much influence Japan had on their new martial art, to the point now where if you talk to practitioners of Taekwondo from Korea, or people who are taught mostly from the Kukiwon, the World Taekwondo, the Olympic Taekwondo people, they don't really have much of a knowledge of how Japan played a role in their development. So, it is what it is. But as you can see, this is sort of the down and dirty explanation of what is karate, what is Taekwondo, what is Kung Fu, how does it all relate, okay? So that's why I consider myself a student of martial arts, big picture sense of the word, okay? I am a student of the martial arts, particularly within the karate family, but, karate is karate. And whether it's the Korean flavor or the Japanese or the Okinawan flavor, it's all one big, happy, messy family tree. There it is. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks so much.